It's easy to look around and notice everything wrong in your city. In this podcast by Every Neighborhood Partnership, join Grace and Andrew as they invite friends, activists, pastors, leaders, and city workers to discover what's good in the neighborhood. Join us for insightful conversations that will encourage you to see your city and its people in a new way.
Welcome to this episode of What is Good in the Neighborhood. We are continuing in our series about the city. So it's called The City, Seeing and Serving the Jesus Way. And on this episode, we again sit down with Randy White and Carlos Huerta, and we're talking about what does this idea of shalom mean? How do we seek shalom? So we get into the Hebrew kind of like expansive definition of it. What does it mean for our city? What does it mean for our neighborhood? What does it mean for our lives? And so there's both a political in the Latin term of that, and there's also a really personal way that works out into how we do relationships with others. So we use the framing of Jeremiah and Micah, those prophets who speak to the people of God and call them to seek the shalom of the city. So really rich episode. I love this framework and this idea. This is really animated how I think about the work I get to do and how I think about my life and what I want to be about, even if I wasn't at EMP, right? This is a framework and an idea that you can take anywhere. So look forward to having you listen, and this is a great one, Seeking Shalom of our city. Well, welcome to What's Good in the Neighborhood. My name is Andrew Feil, and I'll be your host today. And we are in part 2 of a series we are doing called The City, Seeing and Serving the Jesus Way. And I am here with my lovely friends, Randy White, the Reverend Dr. Randy White, and Carlos Huerta of the Center for Community Transformation. Are you a doctor yet?
Not counting on it. Yeah.
He's the only lovely one here, though.
Yes, he's the best of us. I'm really excited to continue this series. So again, if you didn't listen, part 1 was posted a couple weeks ago. And in it, we really, kind of gave the history. Randy gave a little bit of his journey. How did God capture his heart for the city? How has that looked over the years? And we kind of just did some big brushstrokes of some topics that we want to dive deeper into. Today, we're examining a concept that got brought up last time, but is really about this idea of shalom. And so as we think about this overarching vision, biblical vision for could the world look like? We're inviting us to step into like a Hebrew concept, right? The scriptural world Jesus walks into is this vision of shalom. And so what does that mean? We may dive into a couple passages like Jeremiah or Micah that give us a vision of that. But excited to dive in. So how we doing this morning, gentlemen?
Good. It's a lovely day. I think as I think through this topic, I always get excited, right? Because sometimes it's like, hey, we're coming in as folks who want to fix something, and to do, and a lot of the calling that we see to us is how do we be, be amongst people and be neighbors and be friends and partners and that. So,
and any day I'm above ground is a good day. Okay. So I'm, life is good.
It's good. It's good. You haven't done old man talk where you talk about all your ailments. Randy, I'm getting there. My group of friends on Friday, we met and I got stitches because I have some skin cancer. My brother had a broken ankle, and then a buddy of ours had shingles. And we're like, this is the old man club now.
I saw a great T-shirt the other day. It's a black T-shirt like you have on. It was a stick figure of a man, just stick figure. But all around that man were arrows, and by every arrow it said, ow, 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 ow.
Are you at the back in my day stage yet, Randy?
No, thankfully. I'm avoiding that language. Yeah.
That's good. Well, that's why you're still here, because you don't have that. You have a future orientation, which I always love.
Amen.
So, Randy, as we get going, we, again, talked about how cities are foundational to the vision. Like cities were the framing of people. Mm-hmm. God cared deeply about cities and the love for them. As we talked about shalom, kick us off deeper into this concept. What is shalom? What does it look like? How does it shape cities? where does the word come from? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shalom has an image problem. On the shallow side, we think it's just a greeting, it's a way of saying peace, and that's about the depth of the definition that many people have. Is it's simply a word that means peace, and for most people, people think peace means just the absence of conflict, but shalom is this incredibly broad and deep word in the Hebrew scriptures. We don't have a single English word that is the equivalent of the word shalom. It takes at least 5 different words in English to convey everything that a Hebrew-speaking person would have heard when they heard the word shalom. I mean, it does mean peace, but it also means well-being. It also means security and safety. It also means abundance. There's plenty. It means reconciliation. So it means all of those things. And how do you embody all of that? Well, we see the word shalom embedded throughout the scriptures pervasively. And of course, in the New Testament in Greek, the word irene is the equivalent basically, although it's a little bit of a different concept. But yeah, it's a complex, rich, very pregnant word. And so I would just encourage, anytime you read your Bible and you see the word peace in the Old Testament, understand that it is the Hebrew word shalom, and it means so much more than peace. Circle them. Go through your Bible and circle that word. It's unbelievable the number of times that comes to be. So different people have approached the definition of shalom differently and really helpfully. Perry Yoder, Mennonite scholar, did a deep dive. He's a linguist, not just a theologian. So what he did is he said, okay, look, shalom, it comes up a lot in the Old Testament. It's like, well, how is it used? Yeah. So every time that word was used, he wrote descriptions of, the meaning of it in that context. And it turns out in every single time it's used, the meaning or definition of the word falls in one of 3 buckets. The first bucket was, making things the way they ought to be in people. So shalom had to do with the inner person. The scriptures call people to be upright. When they have peace, it means that they're in right relationship with God. Their orientation is with God. So there's this, and also it's not just moral uprightness or God-centeredness. It goes beyond that. There's this kind of a North Star quality to this, so that no matter what decision you're making, no matter what person you're relating to, you do it with this orientation that always tells you where you are. So that was one bucket. Another bucket, he said, every time shalom is used, it means making things the way they ought to be for people. And that means things like, do they have enough to eat? Do they have shelter? Are they experiencing well-being? And, at one point, one of the Old Testament patriarchs asks his sons to go see if the cows out in the field are having shalom. Are the cows having shalom? It's like, okay, I've really never thought about that. The thought that a cow could have shalom, but it's just a practical sense of, is that person or thing experiencing well-being? Third bucket was making things the way they ought to be between people, that peace between friends, peace between nations. The absence of war, but the presence of friendship. So those 3 buckets, that's Perry Yoder's work. Another theologian, Nicholas Woltersdorf, he introduces this word flourishing. And wow, what a great word that is. Because we all know, when a plant is flourishing, it's not what I see in the plant by my back door right now. That is not flourishing. But yeah, we all know what it means to flourish. When a child is flourishing, they're reading on grade level or beyond. When a family is flourishing, they're actually having meals together. When a neighborhood is flourishing, the signs of decay that we saw are like, oh, they're fixing that house up. Why is that? Oh, because they bought that house. They're owners now, they're not renters. They're rooting themselves in the neighborhood. Or those are the signs of flourishing, and we instantly recognize them. And so he says that's the case with physical things, but it's also, there's a flourishing with God, being reconciled with God. There's a flourishing with the environment around us. There's a flourishing in our relationship with others. And there's even a flourishing in ourselves. We become at peace in understanding who we are. So how do we know we're making progress in Shalom? I mean, Shalom is this overarching concept. It can be really abstract to people if we don't have concrete pictures of what it should look like. So we look to those incremental advancements of those categories. We may not see full shalom here on this side of heaven when God remakes the new heavens and the new earth. We see it in Isaiah 65 that people will not only build houses. We have plenty of people who build houses here. In the hot summer on the roofing. They're not the guys who are going to own the house, but they'll build houses and live in them. Or, the lion will dwell with the lamb.
Plant a vineyard and get to eat the fruit.
This
is one of the passages that shapes EMP's vision.
Yeah.
It's one of our vision passages.
Exactly. So you have to ask yourself, okay, if I'm going to measure or look for signs of hope in my city, where in my city am I seeing incremental advances toward that larger vision of peace and reconciliation? That can happen in relationships. It can happen in physical spaces. And I think we understand it intuitively when it does happen.
Well, and I do think even in what we talked about in the first episode, I think what I've appreciated too is the work you're doing in this phase of your life, and probably have done throughout, but you do seem to also be focusing on the shalom in leaders. Mm-hmm. Is there shalom in them? And how do I instill that it's not just about the work being done and shalom for your community or your church or your nonprofit, that the work is happening, transformation's happening, but also are you good?
Yeah. We have to ask that question. I think in my early ministry, I didn't fully understand. The work came first, and that was a spirituality that I don't think was as healthy as it should have been. We lay our lives down for sure. The work is hard. We lay our lives down, but we're also called, I think, to sustain that over a long period of time. We all know that if we're not in balance and experiencing shalom ourselves, then you're not doing anybody any favors. You're going to burn out and leave the process. So shalom is really important for sustainability.
And if I can say, in my spaces, we often talk about KPIs, key performance indicators, where we know that metrically we're making progress in this area. Our kids on reading level, are we profitable?
Yeah.
Right? Are we on track to create the 78 jobs this quarter that we said we would in the grant to the U.S. Department of Agriculture?
Exactly.
There are KPIs and indicators that help us know we're on progress.
That's right.
And I think in the same way, I think what you're trying to, in a way, humanize, and the way Scripture does humanize both the physical and the spiritual aspects of reality of humans, of heaven on earth, if you will.
That's right.
I think you're also helping us understand, here's the concept of shalom, but how do we know that we're experiencing heaven on earth? Because I feel like I used to hear H say, on the way to heaven is heaven.
Yeah.
Right. And so there are these ways that we're experiencing the kingdom on earth.
Yeah. Previews. They're previews of what is to come, actually. Absolutely. And it's a good way to think about it. But I think for nonprofits and churches especially, we have historically not done a good job at measuring anything, measuring outcomes especially. We measure outputs. We gave this many meals out. We, shared our faith this many times. We, X, Y, Z, but not outcomes. What was the result of that? It's easy to tell one story and think that you're really making progress, but it just becomes a symbol of what your aspiration is rather than a real measurement that we're making incremental process. So I think about this biblically. how was it measured in the scriptures?
Yeah.
And, I think we assume that people know, one of the core biblical texts, Jeremiah 29, 1-7. And yet I'm finding more and more people are not understanding how core and central that is. Let me set the context a little bit for Jeremiah 29.
I mean, everybody knows it as the verse after a touchdown or something, or something that you say, so you're like, God's with me. I'm on his side, But
what?
You got to say more.
People,
I think of 29:11.
Yeah, 29:11.
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
Like,
gotcha.
I know the plans I
have for you.
Yeah.
Okay,
like,
gotcha.
Yeah. People
you say that at football games?
I've seen it. Yeah, because it's a rooted sense of like, I'm doing something that God has given me. I feel like God has a plan for me and is using me and gifting me, and I'm going to do his thing, But it's a personal mission, or it's a personal bumper sticker.
I
can see that. I can see that.
And sometimes, like with my friend, they don't make great choices, and they're like, "I'm going to throw Jeremiah 29:11 because God's going to help me figure out my life."
Okay,
and
gotcha.
I think in context, which I think is where you're going to take us to, is like, what is
a deeper story?
Absolutely,
no kidding. Well, the context for Jeremiah 29 was actually earlier when God's people were in captivity in their own city in Jerusalem. And the Babylonians had come and built siege ramps up around the city. They knew their time was at an end. They were going to be overrun by Babylonian army. And they had been in an awful situation. They were being starved. And so they're practicing cannibalism just to survive. And this is where Jeremiah was in prison during this time, in a deep well. And so they're taken off in captivity, and they're carried off in slavery to Babylon. But interestingly, on the way, Scripture takes note of a little incident that happened by the rivers of Babylon. And it's Psalm 137. And I want to take a minute to read that here, if I could. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, and there we wept when we remembered Zion. That means Jerusalem. On the willow trees there, we hung up our instruments, for there our captors asked us for songs, and our tormentors asked us for mirth or happiness, saying, sing us one of those songs of Zion. And then they ask, how could we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? Well, that's a key question. That's the problem right there. They didn't think they could. They thought that their God was unlimited to Jerusalem. But God had something else in mind. And that something else was a letter that God sent to those exiles about their stay in Babylon. Because all the false prophets were telling them, hey, you're going to be here a couple of years, don't worry about that. But this letter was something...
A little like prosperity, like God would never put you in a hard time.
Exactly.
He'll get you out.
Yeah, exactly. It's false hope.
Yeah.
We're pretty good at that. But Jeremiah has a different vision, and let me read that to you. The words of the letter that prophet Jeremiah sent from Jerusalem to the remaining elders among the exiles, to the priests, the prophets, the people whom Nebuchadnezzar had taken from exile. It goes on to say, thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, to all the exiles whom I've sent into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon, build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there, do not decrease. But seek the welfare of the city to where I've sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. For in its welfare you will find your welfare. Profound for a couple of reasons. The word welfare, translated welfare here, any guesses on what that word is? It's shalom.
Yeah.
It's shalom. Seek the peace, the well-being, the reconciliation, the upwardness and righteousness of the city of your captors. It's kind of reminiscent of Jesus saying, love your enemies, isn't it? Think about the Trojan horse, the kind of the spiritual Trojan horse this would be in this wicked city of Babylon. of this ethic being lived out in that context. Think of the influence as children of the light played with children who were being tutored in a very different way. Mm-hmm. Think of the spiritual seeds being planted in that city. And it's really a mechanism for the kingdom of God. And the components, really simple things: houses, gardens, marriage, seeking peace, prayer. These were all the components that were mentioned. So, when we say, we believe in shalom, it's not an abstract concept. It's a commitment to the basic things. I talked about one of the simple joys of my life these days last week is being a crossing guard and praying for every child that crosses the street. It's the purest, most simple thing I do. Praying for their families who are going through a lot. At this school, only about 3% of kids come from middle-class settings. 90-something percent come from lower socioeconomic class families. And just the parents who are working 2 or 3 jobs, it's remarkable the pressures on their lives. It's an honor to smile, to greet, to be warm, to be helpful, to pray for each of those people that cross the street. And I realize when I'm doing that, the promise of this passage is, seek the peace of the city where I've sent you and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its shalom you'll find your shalom. And I just find that's true. It's a promise that I'm finding true. I experience shalom when I'm doing that. Shalom is larger than all the problems of the city. The potential of shalom can speak peace into places that we can't imagine. Where's the peace there? God can bring peace there.
It seems like shalom is like actually one of the I think as this has gotten into my bones over the years, it's like the shalom story of God is one of the reasons I'm a Christian. It's like this is a motivating vision for how the world can be and should be. And I want to live in that world that I am looking and living into that hope versus a hopeless, self-determined world. You know, like that picture just is like so motivating to like why I live. And where is hope in this world? I think that's just a question like we're really battling with in this moment in our culture.
I mentioned last week a leader from Cleveland who spent time with us last week, and she said after she took this immersion class in Fresno and she saw people living this way, living for the welfare of the city, that she said, I realized in my church upbringing, I had never really met people who were going to love their place like this and be committed to this thing called shalom. And she's now, for the last 10 years, just pursued the shalom of Cleveland in a way that's just been had a multiplying effect in that city. And, it's the small things. I mean, these are not grand things. And it's why no one person or no one church or one ministry can be the puppet master to make shalom happen. Mm-hmm. It takes all of us doing the incremental thing, doing the simple things, planting a community garden. I walk by the exterior of the Every Neighborhood Partnership building, and you've got vegetables growing out there. Yeah. And
it's Andrew's lunch awesome. Today.
Yeah. It has been. But even just sitting there and this last fall we had butterflies like crazy in Fresno, and just sitting out having lunch, I'm just like, these little garden boxes create this just moment of beauty and calm and peace. I ate out there yesterday, and it's just what a gift.
Yeah, your alyssum is blooming now, which is really cool.
Well, and I know we're trending on like, hey, the latter half of Jeremiah 29, right? Because in context, they start in exile, and they're saying, hey, we have a different place where we're actually going to move to. We're only here for a short period of time, and so there's this even lack of investment and what can contribute to decay, as we talked about in the last episode. Yeah. But really, the call to to plant gardens, build houses, marry off your children, have family. Like there's a lot of investment that's happening there.
Yeah.
And so when I think of it in context here in Fresno, in the Central Valley, oftentimes people, as we seek the welfare of city, there is this collective of neighborhoods that are made up of people.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious if maybe you can speak to that a little bit, Randy, because not every neighborhood experiences shalom in the same way that others do. And so what does that look like in context here, especially as you move through Jeremiah 29?
Yeah. I think the most important thing about shalom in this context is that shalom is portable. So you started talking about how they were hoping to stay there for only a couple of years. They had associated the shalom of God with their territory, their home territory, where they were comfortable and in charge. But they couldn't imagine having that same feeling of being comfortable or knowing their God and the blessing of their God in another place. But the fact was, I think the lesson they were being taught is that that God's shalom is portable. It goes with you. And so the question is, are you experiencing it? And are you being an agent for it? So you can put me in the Jackson neighborhood of Central Fresno, or you can put me in Raisin City, or you could put me in Sanger or Carruthers or Orange Cove. And in every one of those contexts, you're going to have shalom and you're going to be an agent of shalom. Now, the issues are going to be different from neighborhood to neighborhood. In the realities of North Fresno, they're going to have a whole different set of issues. Where is shalom being vandalized, as we talked about last week? Well, it may be in a more hidden way, but it's happening. This is the human condition. Drug addiction, mental health issues, anorexia.
You were even saying you see shalom when you see families eating together, and I thought of that's true on low income and on wealthy. You don't see families and wealthy families eating together. Their kids are running from thing to thing. Parent outsources stuff to anybody else.
Yeah.
So kids actually don't have the time and the focus and the love and the attention of their parents.
It can be that way, and it can be that way in poor families too, for different reasons. But so this is the perhaps most essential thing about shalom is it's not somebody else's responsibility. It's something that we experience ourselves and then become agents of. And in that way, shalom is portable. We live in an evil world. The context in which we live is the context in which shalom is to be lived out. So, I saw an example of that recently in my current neighborhood, in Jackson neighborhood. There's been a homeless man in the neighborhood for the last 2 years. And this homeless man is like really bedraggled. I mean, he's just haggard in every way, unkempt in every way, filthy clothes. And he tends to come and stand near the school. And I'm a crossing guard at that school. So I'm watching him. He's on that corner and he stands at an odd angle. And many parents are alarmed when they see him, and they feel like, is he exposing himself? What's happening here? And they assume that. And so much so that the school has asked us to ask if we can kind of shepherd him along. And so, a couple of times we've had to do that. But he's deaf, completely deaf. He's mute, completely mute. He's a Cambodian man, so he comes from a refugee family. And this is his home. These are the streets he lives on. This is where he feels comfortable. So most people just don't relate to him. They're chasing him off. They're yelling at him, even though he can't hear them. And so the other day, my son Jameson saw him on the corner. And Jameson, he's a Youth for Christ director. This guy's fearless. He talks to anybody. He has to, go to junior high and high school. So he's absolutely fearless. Yeah. But he said, I'm just going to go try to connect with him. So he takes a piece of paper out with him and a pencil. And he walks up to him, and the guy's a little bit fearful because he thinks he's going to get chased off. And Jameson just asks, what's your name? He writes it. The guy can read. And so he says, Rizzy. Yeah, that's his name, Rizzy. And he said, then he writes Cambodian there. Now, clearly, as Jameson's trying to go back and forth on paper like this, he also has mental health issues. And so it was impossible to continue the conversation. But if I ask myself, what does Shalom look like? To me, it looked like Jameson just making an attempt at relationship. Even though in the end it wasn't successful, you don't know what was planted in that time. It was successful because he did it. And he did it as an act of worship and as an act of shalom. And we leave the results to God. But for me, that was a great example.
Can I just say, like, there could be contexts and there could be spaces where some may say, like, Rizzy is unredeemable.
Right.
That we've given up on him because he's homeless, he's deaf, he's mute, he has mental health issues.
Would say that.
But we also serve a God where no one is unredeemable to him. And I think part of our call, our work, as you name, is Jameson making that attempt.
Yeah.
To, and again, redeem, restore, pursue shalom in Rizzy's life as well.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Gerasene demoniac in the book of Mark, the man living among the tombs. You remember the story? And people, they didn't want anything to do with him. They'd ostracized him. Jesus meets him, exorcises whatever demon was in him. And then people saw him clothed and in their right mind, or him clothed in his right mind. And, when people look at Rizzy, they can't imagine that. They can't imagine him clothed in his right mind. I neglected to say Jameson prayed for him too. And that's the key to everything. That's Jeremiah 29. Seek the peace of your city, pray for it. And for that, you'll find your own welfare in that.
And as we bring in Psalm 137 back into the fold, is that others will ask, what is this God that you're serving?
That's right.
Why is this different? I like those songs.
Yeah.
I want to hear those songs in my language, in my context too.
Yeah. I hope that was the reason they asked, and not just to torment them, But there was a curiosity about this vantage point that God's people have. It's contagious. Yeah. So how do we do all this? I mean, how do you embed peace? How do you embed this comprehensive shalom in your city? Talking about H. Spees again, this amazing leader that has had such an influence on our way of thinking and on me as a man. H had this favorite chart that he would show, and
I can put it in the show notes.
Okay, good.
The donut chart.
He calls it the donut chart, and so everybody can imagine a donut, the shape, and it's got a hole in the middle. And H would say, really, when you think about a city, there are 4 sectors of the city. The donut hole is the neighborhood sector, and then you got 1/3 of the donut is the public sector. Another 1/3 of the donut is the private sector, and the bottom 1/3 of the donut is the nonprofit or faith sector. And so, ask yourself, and so what are those sectors? Every sector has an institution in it. Public and private, or public sector might be government or law enforcement, some public education, yeah. Private sector might be business, might be private education also, media. Nonprofit or religious would be churches, faith-based nonprofits, other religions, that kind of thing. So he would ask, well, where's the church? Well, the church probably in a couple of those sectors, right? You got the church physically in neighborhoods in the donut hole. And churches are rooted in neighborhoods. That's one way to think about it. You got them acting as an institution in that nonprofit sector. But H says that's not the full answer right there. The answer is they're working at City Hall, they're working in law enforcement, they're working in the media, they're working in private education, they're working in those other nonprofits. The church is scattered. And in other words, it's God's people scattering into every piece of the fabric of society and having a shalom influence in those. It's a super smart way to go about things on God's part. H used to say, isn't it amazing how God created, IBM to pay the missionary salaries of its workers? So you're working for IBM. Yeah, you're really on mission. And that's the way God funds his mission throughout the world, is that God's people embedded in all those systems are to live in a way that creates shalom. So then what do you do with the fragmentation of shalom? You're there to reassemble the wholeness that God intended. Have you guys ever seen the concept of kintsugi?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm an Enneagram 1, or that's how I identify. That kintsugi image is just like very powerful for me because I see what is broken in the world. You can obviously explain it, but I see what is broken and I can stay there.
Yeah. Totally.
And brokenness is bad in me and in others and in the world. And so that's a really half-empty framing. So
I work with glass and mosaic glass and art glass, and so I'm constantly fracturing things. And I've got cuts on my hand right now. I just finished a mosaic project, and I leave blood on every table I work with. But kintsugi is a Japanese form of art that takes pottery that's been broken, and it looks like it's useless. It's never going back together again. And even if you piece it together and glue it together, it's going to look terrible. Kintsugi takes what is broken and it rejoins the pieces, but at the fault lines, at the crack lines, it actually carves the crack a little larger. And then it fills it first with epoxy, but then with 18 karat gold. And so what you end up with is a ceramic vase or a bowl that has all these crack lines, but their crack lines are filled with gold. It's taking something that is broken and ugly and configuring it as a work of art, because randomness in art is really God's way. You think about it, all the trees are growing outside. Almost none of them have right angles to them, right? No, they're completely random, and it's part of that we find beautiful. And it's the randomness of an English garden that has like 15 different kinds of flowers growing right next to each other. And it just gives this impressionist view. So kintsugi is like that. It takes what was broken and makes it beautiful again. And I think about kintsugi, I think about a nonprofit in the city called Good Dirt Collective, working with girls who are aged out of foster care, and their lives have been fractured in so many ways. And as we know, young women coming out of foster care are very vulnerable to human trafficking. But they're working with these girls, giving them dignity, friendship, repairing their lives, healing of trauma, getting driver's licenses and completing degrees, and even helping them get into housing. That's kintsugi right there. Those are veins of gold that are now visible. And it's just an incredibly beautiful thing.
Former podcast guest, I'll link that as well.
Is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
They were in our last series. Amazing conversation. Love them. So we talked through Jeremiah, but the prophets are the ones that often are speaking, right? They're reminding people of God's vision for their mission and trying to light that flame to rekindle the call of God in the life of God's people, right? And so Micah is another prophet that speaks loudly to cities, and there's a verse that speaks to that. So tell us a little bit of what does Micah say to us? What does Micah say to the people of God, or how does that maybe speak to Shalom and God's call for us?
Yeah. I have a colleague in South Africa named Stefan de Beer that I met through Baki and through Leadership Foundations. And Stefan he's done this deep dive into Micah that I just can't get out of my mind. Micah 6:8. He has told thee, O man, what is good and what's required of thee, but do justly, seek mercy, walk humbly with your God. And so what he's done is describe Micah 6:8 as a series of conversions, a series of theologies, and a series of practices. And so let me walk through that a little bit with you, and stick with me, folks. This is it's more complicated stuff, but it's really worth knowing. We look at the three imperatives of that passage: doing justly, loving mercy, walking humbly, and we ask, okay, what's the conversion that's necessary to do each of those things? And what's the theology necessary for each? And then what's the relational practice that's necessary? So let's go backwards. We'll start with walking humbly. What's the conversion that's necessary there? Well, it's a personal conversion. Walk humbly with your God. It's vertical. It's me to God, and it's this encounter with Jesus. That's the conversion. What's the theology? Well, it has to be, if you're converting to Jesus, then you're converting to be like him. And who was he? He was a servant master. He washed the disciples' feet. He laid down his life. So it's a theology of servanthood that helps us walk humbly. What's the relational practice? Well, our relationship is with Jesus. So therefore, it's discipleship. It's growing to be more like Jesus. So you see how this works? The conversion, personal, the theology, servanthood, the relational practice, discipleship. Okay, so then the next imperative is loving mercy. What's the conversion? Well, if walking humbly gives a personal conversion, this is an interpersonal conversion. That's an interesting way to think. We don't really think about converting to other people, but it's saying, no, there is no me without you. Rene Girard talks about there's no I, there's only we. The concept, the African concept of Ubuntu, is that you are an important part of my story, and we can't actually see each other as different.
Then it has to be true for a city too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't just say a city's healthy and parts of it are unhealthy.
No, that's right. Yeah, we can't be satisfied that there's cancer in the feet of our city. It'll spread if we don't really look at it. So it's a conversion to each other. What's the theology behind that? Well, it's a theology of community. Yeah, we're all part of one. And then what's the relational practice? Stefan says it's just neighborliness. That's all there is to it. It's just neighborliness, something we've really lost the art of. We drive home, electric garage door opener, we pull into the garage, we punch it again, we live life in the backyard. One of the things I've appreciated about my son, Joseph, and his ministry with neighborhood churches, that they live their life in the front yard too. They have a fire pit out there, they gather the neighborhood out there, they have a stage on their side lawn in the front yard. I mean, they do stuff there, and life lived visibly as neighbors.
I saw a ministry, this like discipleship program recently, and they had a blog post on the most spiritual act I could do is to get you a dog. And the idea was just like having a dog and having to walk a dog is a gift to neighborliness and to actually knowing your neighbors. And like, as somebody who, I'm in a very dog walky neighborhood. And so it's like, we're outside all the time, but like, I know the people that walk dogs.
Yeah.
Like, I know them well. We say hi, we talk about the Dodgers, talk about whatever. Like there's a set of conversations in life because they're out. They're walking. Yeah. So I was like, that's a great line.
I love that. And it can work in the reverse too. Like the neighbors that don't walk with their baggies with them, like that's not neighborliness.
That's true.
I'm not letting my son hear this because he really wants a dog these days. Something you say, Randy, just makes me think through like even this paradigm. And I know we're not done with this model, but even just the way we think about ministry. Because oftentimes, like, and I've heard you talk about this, is like we can go through three different parts of the way we see ministry. Is that we're doing it in community, right? That we are very much like a service, like we just happen to be in this community, but our call is to our church or to the nonprofit. And so we very much decide like, this is what we can do. And it's more focused on
inward.
Yeah. And then there's this concept of we're doing it to the neighborhood or to community or for that we don't largely involve or dive deeper into the needs of the community. We very much are focused on like, well, it feels good to pass out food and it feels good to clothe people, and those are all needed. However, the investment are in these tangible, I feel good because I gave Randy an apple and I can see he's no longer hungry, rather than concerning upstream and long term and saying, well, what's the reason that Randy doesn't have access to a fresh apple,
Right.
or that is able to provide? And I think this concept of neighborliness, as you mentioned here, is that really the call to ministry is to do it with neighborhood and with people, and to integrate and to become. So what you're saying is, I'm walking my dog. I can see that the sidewalk isn't even. I can see that the roads, and there isn't a park in the neighborhood. And I think as we talk to neighbors, like, they would appreciate a pocket park here. But that doesn't happen if we're not with people, if there is not this concept of neighborliness.
How could we do it together?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we are a we.
Yes.
Yeah, so true. So that's walking humbly and loving mercy. What about doing justly? This gets a little more complicated because the conversion that's necessary is what Stefan de Beer calls a public political conversion.
Uh-oh.
Now, when we say political, we're not talking about political party. Political in the old-fashioned, the Greek sense of the word, means engagement. It means responsibility. Like, we are all members of a community, therefore we take responsibility. And we live out our faith publicly. So there's a public theology to doing justice. So public political conversion, public theology that says, I'm going to live my faith openly in a way that brings transformation. It's not just about me and Jesus. It's about us and the well-being of the community that Jesus intends. And what's the relational practice that's going to get us there? Again, he uses a word that has a much deeper meaning than what we mean. He says, the relational practice is citizenship. Now, he doesn't mean like I have my documents. He means I'm taking responsibility. I'm a steward of the community that I have. That's what citizenship in the Greek sense of the word, like archaic Greek, like Athens. So what's the result of doing all these things? What would happen in a city if God's people did all of these things, had all of these three conversions, had these three theologies, and had these three relational practices? Well, De Beer says if we walk humbly, we get an inclusive, caring city because people are focused on Jesus, wanting others to be involved and loved and known they're loved by Jesus as well. The result of loving mercy is a city practicing interdependence and sharing. And a city doing justice is it's the equitable city where everybody has access to everything that they need. So that's a good example, I think, of what I was trying to illustrate when I talked about Jameson and the way he reached out to Rizzi last week when I talked to him. May have been last week.
Today.
Or it could have been today.
Yeah.
See, I told you, I'm glad to be above ground right now, you know. But here's another example. Rhonda Duick. We've mentioned the park that she's working on. We mentioned the CCT.
Can you remind us who Rhonda Duick is?
Thank you. Sorry. Rhonda Duick is the director of the Jackson Community Development Corporation, and for the last several years has been really mobilizing people in the neighborhood to work together for what they want. So park is part of that. CCT was part of Jackson CDC's efforts with the Center for Community Transformation and changing the street to a safer street. We've mentioned that. Here's something else she's been doing. She's worked with Neighborhood Church in taking a delegation to the owner of the abandoned hospital over by Roosevelt High School. It's been abandoned for years and years. There's an owner for the last several years, and they're asking that owner to make it into housing for the elderly and maybe some businesses on the bottom floor that would really serve the neighborhood as well. And why can that happen? It can happen because Rhonda's not only had a personal conversion to Christ, walking humbly with her God, but it's also a public political conversion, not to a party, but to a process that's supposed to serve people. And she has this public theology that believes that place matters. So all that feeds into, let's go talk to this guy who owns this entire property and see if we can just spark his imagination for how this property could really bless the people around it, and listen to their concerns too about what it might be turned into. It's just a good practical example of a leader living out, I think, Micah 6:8.
So, silly question here, but where is there justice in this? Like, if we're listening to this and it's like, oh, the elderly need housing, there's a proper, could you break that down a little bit? Just so that we're understanding for those out there.
No, thanks for a good question. So one is that for the last decade or more, 2 decades now, that hospital, abandoned, has been a blight on the neighborhood. Broken windows, chain link fence surrounding it, garbage collecting in it. It's been a blight to the neighborhood. And then the neighbors who live adjacent to it talk about what that blight attracts. Negative influences, lowered housing values, transiency around it, because people know they can camp out there and there are no businesses close to it. So they can,
I mean, it takes up half a city block. This is a huge property.
This is a huge property, yeah. It's also a depressing sign for the city. It confirms all the negative attitudes about City Hall. They can't get their act together. And people don't understand this is a very complex thing to be able to convert this property into something that's really good. And how decisions are made, sometimes they're just made because, hey, this pencil's out, we'll do that. Rather than, how can we bless this neighborhood? And I think it's a little bit like Jameson talking to Rizzy. I hope this helps. I'm praying that this helps. I don't know if this will help. I think that's what Rhonda and Pastor Joseph, these are attempts at making progress, at establishing justice in a way that the neighborhood can benefit from, but we don't know. We leave it to God.
At Every Neighborhood Partnership, we believe that strong, vibrant communities start with engaged, empowered residents. But to make that happen, we need your help. EMP is on a mission to connect neighbors, create opportunities for local leadership, and transform neighborhoods through education, collaboration, and advocacy. And every dollar you donate goes directly to supporting programs that make a real difference, whether it's providing land use education, elementary literacy mentoring, or healthy spaces to help kids and families grow. When you donate to Every Neighborhood Partnership, you're not just giving money. You're investing in a future where every neighborhood in Fresno has the tools and resources it needs to thrive. Your contribution, big or small, helps ensure that our communities have a seat at the table in the decisions that affect them most. So, if you believe in students excelling, community members that are healthy and whole, and our neighborhoods thriving, we invite you to make a donation today. It's simple. Just visit everyneighborhood.org or tap the link in the show notes to give. Your support helps develop the next generation of leaders like Fresno depends on it. Donate now to Every Neighborhood Partnership.
Ever wondered what makes your neighborhood unique? Or the history of your city that shapes the places you love? Well, now you can explore the city like never before, right from your own car, using the Voice Map app. Introducing Every Neighborhood Partnership's Drive Tour, a self-guided audio tour that brings your community's history, landmarks, and stories to life. As you drive through local streets, EMP's Drive Tour will guide you with fascinating insights from people, places, and events that have shaped your neighborhood. Whether you're discovering hidden gems, learning about community activism, or simply enjoying a fresh perspective on familiar places, this tour is a great way to connect to your community in a whole new way. So what are you waiting for? Tap into Every Neighborhood Partnership Drive Tour today on Voice Map and get to know your community like never before. Download the Voice Map app, search for Every Neighborhood Partnership Tour, and start exploring today. Fresno's story is waiting to be discovered. I think those. Thank you for both of those. I have never heard that framework from Stefan, so I think that's a really helpful way. Again, the bent and the lean of I think Western evangelicalism is to an individual faith that asks us to care about heaven and the salvation of others. But then come short beyond that to move into what does this mean for my place? What does this mean for my life? What does it mean for the lives of those around me? So the interconnectedness, just that I really like the idea of what kind of conversion, because you have to go through some sort of conversion out of just my own personal faith conversion to I have been radically reshaped to realize there's an us. and that my faith, though not right or left, will have political implication. And those are conversions that take time. And I think when we keep it just us or a political, party faith, then those are limiting to what that implication is for us in the world. So
I had a good example of that working this morning, actually. Tina and I, we read the scriptures together in the morning. This morning we were in a chapter in Acts where the gospel had come to Cornelius' family, and they had received the Holy Spirit. Well, Peter is called to the Jerusalem, council, and he has to defend what he sees as happening. They're angry at him that like you're hanging out with Gentile people. They're different. They're not part of. Now, who were these? These weren't Pharisees accusing. These were the church in Jerusalem. Like they had converted to Jesus. They had that personal conversion, but not a public conversion. They didn't have a we. They were still locked in, even though they had met Jesus and received the Holy Spirit. They had not yet extended the implications of that out to the fact that maybe God wants to repair relationships between different ethnic groups and language groups and cultures. And so you can see that just the wheel turning and grinding a little bit. But guess what? By the end of that passage, they rejoiced.
Yeah, they repent.
They do.
Yeah, they repent and rejoice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That can happen to all of us. So it has to start with Jesus.
Yeah.
But then it begins to extend to influence everything, our politics as well. Yeah.
Well, that idea of shalom, so we've hit on that it is both a personal and a public. And then we also hit that like shalom and the concepts that we're been unpacking is not just, it is the vision of the city, it is the vision of our place. But there's a concept that you've mentioned last episode of like that it is also us as people, that shalom is us being in right relationship with one another. And you hit on a concept of a guild of friends. And so that like rightness, that relationship that can exist, like, we just, I think, hit a minute on it. So maybe speak a little bit more on that.
Well, let me take you to a passage I think would really be helpful for us to focus on that for a minute. From John chapter 15.
I love that I can hear the pages flipping here.
Okay.
On your Bible as you're looking for that.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I know. I do appreciate the
more paper on here. I can do that. Let's see.
What's the ASMR?
Yes.
The what?
Have you ever heard of ASMR?
No.
I don't. It doesn't like people will record stuff where they're just like opening up.
It's like a sensation. Yeah.
I am the true vine, and my Father's the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit. You've already been cleansed by the word that I've spoken to you. Abide in me as I abide in you, just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine. Neither can you unless you abide in me. I'm the vine, you are the branches. Those who abide in me, and I in them, bear much fruit, because apart from me you can do nothing. He goes on to say, if you abide in me and my word abides in you, ask for whatever you wish and it'll be done for you. I want you to bear much fruit. Let's see, let me skip to. No one has greater love than this, that you lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I do not call you servants any longer, because the servant doesn't know what the master is doing. But I've called you friends, because I've made known to you everything that I've heard from my Father. And you did not choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you to go bear fruit that will last. So you'll ask the Father will give you whatever you ask him in my name. I'm giving you these commands so that you may love one another. So a guild, let's just unpack that word. A guild is kind of a membership. There were guilds in medieval times. There was the stoneworkers guild, there was the metal workers guild, guilds that form around a craft. And I think a guild is a great way to describe those who are committed to their city, because there's a certain craft to that, and it's specialized. But there are also certain expectations, and guilds had all sorts of expectations. You had to be an apprentice first. You had to do all sorts of things to be a member. And it was it was costly. You also paid into the guild. So this is not free. So a guild has expectations and standards, but a guild of friends has a purpose and a relationship. So that's kind of where we begin. And it really, for me, came from that passage. You realize that a guild of friends cares for one another. It becomes a community, not just because we like hanging out or we like the same baseball team or something like that.
Or whiskey,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we've got to tell the Dodgers drool story. Well, maybe that's for another podcast. Okay. He's a Dodgers fan. I'm a Giants fan.
Yeah, let's go.
But please listen to me still. I know I'm in the minority here. It's okay.
Hey, we're all about the reconciliation, the shalom between teams and places. So.
I agree. Dodgers drool. So caring for each other, becoming a community comes from doing what Jesus commands. That's what binds us together, really. Doing what Jesus commands, loving in the way he commanded. Other people, our city, people who are different, all of that is, the things that Jesus commanded us to do is what unites us and binds us together. Seeking the transformation of the city through prayer and action, that's the Jeremiah thing. That's, plant gardens, build houses, pray for your city. This describes a lot of the actions of a guild of friends. I think it also involves mutually assessing our desperation. Like, how much do you want transformation to happen in your city? I think a lot of the structures that grew in Fresno that are seeking the shalom of the city, and I can name several of them right now, grew out of this soil of our desperation because we saw Fresno heading in the wrong direction. The church and God's people siloed. At one point in the late 90s, we had 100 murders in the city, 13,000 car thefts, 8,500 validated gang members. We could keep telling ourselves we're doing a great job, but the evidence was to the contrary. So how desperate are we for transformation? A guild of friends recognizes that desperation and then builds on it by proactively seeking the peace of the city together. I think it's also about supporting an institutional network that sustains the effort. And when I say institutional network, I mean not just people, not just my friend, Albert, who lives down the street and he likes to see good things happen in the neighborhood too. That's great. But if it's just Albert and me, like we're one individual each. But if Albert's church and the nonprofit that I'm related to suddenly start thinking of each other as allies, then that's a whole new set of possibilities right there. So kind of this institutional network that sustains the effort. Institutions are really important in a city. We need mechanisms for onboarding new friends so new people learn. Why does God care about the city? I think this podcast is a good example of what's happening. I think when we collaborate, we create a collective impact. The sum of the parts is
greater than the whole.
So the
whole.
I always forget how that phrase works.
I can't even give it to you. Yeah.
You could tell me something and I'd believe both of you. Yeah.
Collective impact. We'll leave it there.
There's parts and there's holes. So
yeah.
Just really quick, what is collective impact or where does it come from? Just if someone wants to read a little bit more about it.
Look it up under the Stanford Innovation Review, an article called Channeling Change from 15 years ago. Really helps understand the 5 different components of having a collective impact where really, if you added up all of the talent in our city, and they were all working individually, that'd be great. But you pull them together institutionally, and now the sum of that total is much greater than it would have been.
Practically speaking, rather than being siloed, we're all working together for the common good. Yeah,
and it highlights the fact that that you need a backbone institution in a city, and really, I would say that every neighborhood partnership and the Center for Community Transformation are backbone institutions that are fanning the flames of this kind of collective impact. So all of these things make up what I consider to be a guild of friends, seeking each other's well-being and seeking the well-being of the city, because we are a we. Yeah.
And is that, as you think about that phrase, is that mean like, because I think about some of the donors, some of the friends that support EMP who are in they're not a nonprofit space, but they just see the work and they're investing in it. And they're doing amazing work, and our lunch, our coffees, our conversations are feeding each other. Is it that, or is this actually like this is a small group that reads regularly, or is this just you kind of have collected Guild of Friends over years of doing this work, and at moments you call them together, at moments it's just you see them along the way? Like how?
I would see it more as a life commitment. I cannot imagine a time when I wouldn't gather with you and Carlos and a handful of others that we know are seeking the peace of the city. And it's really a form of covenanting together. So even if, for some reason, some of the collection of people that gather together as a Guild of Friends here in Fresno were to disperse for whatever reason, for health reasons or for family reasons or whatever, I would imagine there being a mechanism to hold us together so that we can continue encouraging each other. So it may look different. I mean, there's no rule about this. It's going to look different as long as there are these features of we know what our Savior wants because he's called us his friend. He's shared his agenda with us. We share that agenda. How will we do that? Well, we have to sustain ourselves. So we need each other in this process. We have to do it not just individually, but institutionally. So if we can replicate any of those in whatever Guild of Friends God calls you to, then you're going to be carrying out the friendship of Jesus in a way that makes a difference in your city.
That's beautiful. And I think these are the practices as you seek shalom. What we've tried to describe, I think, in this is both, again, the biblical vision and mandate and call and hope, some examples of what does it look like in a city and a neighborhood. And also, to me, the Guild of Friends is a practice to keep the idea of shalom in your heart, in your mind, and to live it out. Like it's a personal way of being that lives that out. Like we are not independent people in this. It is that us that does this together.
Yeah, I often give a benediction that is meaningful to me because it synopsizes what the actions of a transformational leader are. And not just a transformational leader who's leading a ministry, but those who wander into a church, wonder what their faith is supposed to mean in the rest of the week, and wander out of that church. I want them to hear this. And what I often pray for people is that they might go in the courage and the creativity of their Creator, that they might go following the rough resurrection road of their Redeemer, and that they might go singing the sweet and the savory songs of their Sustainer, that they would go to the ones they love and to the ones that nobody seems to love. If we'll just do that, we'll be a Guild of Friends on behalf of the city.
Well, I want to end there because that's perfect. So thank you again, Randy.
My pleasure.
We'll put your info in the bio for the series. And Carlos, thank you for journeying with us. And thank you for you guys listening. More to come. So we have 4 more episodes in this series to come. So thank you. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to find out more about EMP, you can visit us at everyneighborhood.org or follow us at EMP Fresno. Every Neighborhood Partnership and this podcast exists to activate, equip, mobilize, and transform here in Fresno and beyond. If you liked what you've heard, please share and review what's good in the neighborhood wherever you listen. We'll see you next time.